Hi, it's Verrent again. Yesterday, I spoke to you about why for us at Unlimited, we think exceptional art by disabled artists can change the world. Challenging and changing the status quo is what we're all about. Pushing artists, pushing arts organisations, pushing venues and pushing funders too. No one should be sitting comfortably. If you are, find a different way of sitting. I don't want you to get comfortable. I want to make you uncomfortable so that you take action. But how? That's the biggest question we're always asked. How do I make that happen? So today I have 5 tips for you. Here's the first. Pass on power. If you have power to make decisions, think of who you could pass that power on to. There are very few disabled people in positions of power or where they have actual power to make decisions that affect change. If you program a festival, could you have a guest programmer for a season? If you schedule a venue, how can you pass power on so that disabled people themselves are making decisions and not just you all the time? Within Unlimited, we try to do this often. I don't choose our commissions. I sit on the selection panel, but I have no voting power. I have given away my power because I believe other people are better placed to make those decisions. We have a much wider range of opinion. It's not just my personal taste, my personal preference. That's not what it's about. It's a much wider range of opinion than that. So this for me is really important. How do you pass on power? How do you train up the next generation? How do you stop the system replicating, repeating itself, and the same people making decisions year in, year out? How can you pass that on? How can you break the status quo? The second thing I recommend is to change what you do. I want to talk about a piece that we commissioned last year, Wendy Hoos. It's a play, a fairly standard play, but it's not. They decided to change what they did and embed access within the play itself. So the sign language interpretation is there for everybody to see. It's on a television screen in the set, in the room. The captions for deaf people are there for everyone to see. They actually come up like text messages. The show is about texting. Well, it's actually about sexting. It's a sex comedy about disabled people getting it on. And so the captions come up like on a mobile phone. They're very, very funny. And they have emoticons and they have text speak. It's very in keeping with the aesthetic of the play. And the audio description for visually impaired people, again, is heard by everyone in the audience. And the audio describer does not like what is happening on stage and comments through their description. They find it very difficult to describe some of the action that happens. But they changed what they were doing. They changed the way in which they worked. The end result is much better than a standard play. Everybody can access it and it's heightened. Again, get onto the internet, watch their promo. It's really, really worth it. Wendy Hoos by Birds of Paradise. My next recommendation is to change who you work with. One of the biggest problems we have in the cultural sector in the UK is that people work with the same people again and again and again and again and again. There's no way for new people to break in. There's no way for disabled people who don't have the level of networking experience, the contacts, to break through that glass ceiling. So why not change the people you're working with? Find new partners. Stretch yourself. The next one, the next hint, change how you do it. We had to do this ourselves. We had one artist that we couldn't pay in the conventional way. Usually when we commission work, we pay one sum up front, another sum halfway through the process, and then a final sum at the end. But this artist said to us, I can't work that way. I need a regular payment each month. because that way I can control my budget. I don't want to give the power to somebody else to control it for me. I want to control it myself, but I can't work with such a large sum straight off. It's too much for me. So we changed our whole finance system in order to support that artist to work in the way she wanted to. It sounds a tiny change. It was probably the one that took us longest and was hardest for us to do, to change our own administrative systems so that they suit the person, not that they suit us. And that was a really big learning for us that we have to be prepared to change too. My next hint: do something now. Most people say, oh, I'm very worried about getting something wrong. I don't know what to do. Do something, anything. Have one idea and put it in place tomorrow. Put it in place before Christmas. Do something quickly and plan to do something bigger later. But don't just plan to do something bigger without taking action. Everybody can do something, even if it's only finding out new contacts to work with, going and seeing a piece of work, an exhibition that you wouldn't usually have come in contact with. There is something you can do. Just spend a minute now thinking, what is your one action going to be? The actual practical thing you're going to do that takes this from theory into action. That's what I want from you. And my final top tip: take risks. You're not going to get anywhere unless you do something differently, unless you take a risk, unless you work with someone that you don't yet know. For us, taking risks has really paid off. I can remember Unlimited back in 2012. When we didn't run it, it was run by the Olympic Committee in the UK, the Olympic and Paralympic Committee in London. I can remember the selection panel meeting. I was on the selection panel, and we had one piece of work ask for funding. And it was for Sue Austin, an artist who's a wheelchair user, to take her wheelchair and turn it into an underwater chair so that she could go underwater with coral and fishes. Half the panel said, no, this is ridiculous. This is completely impossible. This will never happen. And the other half of the panel said, but what if it did? What if that could happen? Wouldn't that be one of the images that could help change the world? And we did fund that piece, and it has changed the way in which people see a wheelchair. Rather than seeing it as being an object of limitation, people who have seen that work now see it as an object of freedom, of liberation. To do that, we needed to take risks. I need you to take risks. We all need you to take risks. And the results can be unlimited. Thank you.